Right, we're back after our intermission of eating our lunch. So we'll move on to the next question, which is about net spend. Is net spend in any way a meaningful metric? Now, you can give us an explanation of what people believe net spend to be, and then fire away, Colin.
Well, what net spend means is essentially the difference between what clubs spend on transfers in and what they get back from transfers out. So if Manchester City buy players for 100 million and they recoup 25 million from the sale of players they already have on contract, then the net spend is 75 million. So net spend is often bandied about both in a serious discussion and in a joking way in terms of Spurs and their winning the net spend cup every year. But net spend is, in my view anyway, net spend is a particularly poor metric because clubs don't measure expenditure on players by net spend. When clubs buy a player, obviously there's wages to take into account in the cost of a player. But what they do is they do something called amortise the fee for a player over the course of their contract. So basically, they split it up over the length of the contract. If you buy a player for 50 million on a 5-year contract, that cost to the club in the accounts is £10 million a year. So let's say you buy a £50 million player, you're paying £5 million a year. The cost of that player is actually £15 million. Now, to give
that's every season.
That's every season, yeah. To give an example of where net spend, a particular incident of net spend, in the summer of 2017, which was after the first year of Pep Guardiola being manager of Manchester City, City went out and spent in the summer about 220 million, followed by another 58 million in the winter transfer window on Aymeric Laporte. And City were heavily criticised in the press for how can they spend that amount of money. We did get some money back, I think it was about 90 million. So we had a net spend of somewhere in the region of 120 million in that summer, with another 60 million added on in the January window. I say there's a lot of talk in the media among fans of how can City manage that net expenditure. But actually, in that summer, we released or loaned out or sold about 17 players. Now, not only are we getting fees for those players, which we can ignore for the moment, but they're coming off the wage bill, and some of them still we were charging this amortisation of their transfer fee over the life of the contract. So again, that comes off out of one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, with the 200 and something million was spent on players, so let's say that's roughly divided by 5, 40 million a year. There's an addition of 5 or 6 players to the wage bill, which is about, 25, 30 million. So we're talking about, in accounting terms, an annual increase in our expenditure of around 70, 75 million. What you've got to take into account is what we've taken off the wage bill, as I said before. So about 17 players, either through wage cuts or loans or being released or being sold, came off the wage bill. And that pretty well accounted for all of the 75 million we bought in. We'd already bought in. So although in capital terms we had a fairly 120 million pound net outgoing, in actual fact in revenue expenditure terms it was almost neutral.
Yeah, and revenue is what FFP is.
And revenue is what FFP is decided on. So that's why, in my opinion, net spend is not a great metric to use, because you have to look at it all round from wages, players going out, and even a player you released on a free, you might be paying him 200k a week. That's £10 million off the bottom line. Yeah. So that's why you've got to be very careful about net spend as a standalone metric.
I think when Chiri, I think he extended his contract, just trying to remember off the top of my head, he was on about £250,000 a week.
Yep.
And they said, next season you're on £100,000 a week. Now that straight away is about £7.5 million of a saving for that season.
Joe Hart was another one where we loaned him out to Burnley, we got a loan fee, and they paid his wages. So, or however it worked, we basically got Joe Hart's wages back either via a fee or via some contribution to the wages, or the combination of both. So again, that's another one you've got to take into account.
On the City thing, people don't realise that last season they said, oh, you spent 60 million on Mahrez, maybe we usually buy a few kids as well. But we sold about £50 million worth of players in terms of young kids like Joe Hart, well, he's obviously not a young kid, we got £2.5 million for him. We sold Angus Gunn for between 12 and £15 million. So we got some money from there, and that was a profit on a player. So that's another thing that actually hits us in our accounts to make our accounts financially better. And we got that 50 million, you know, and all the loan fees that we send players out, some of them are going for, I think there was one player I read we were getting about €350,000 for his loan fee, and the club were paying his wages, so he was costing us nothing. And we just sold a kid that probably no one's heard of, because he never came, you know, I'm not even sure he set foot in Manchester, Pablo Mari. And we bought him for about £225,000. We loaned him out for a couple of seasons, and we sold him for just over £1 million. So we've made on this kid well over £1 million profit in the 2 or 3 years he's been at City. And people forget that or ignore it. So it's more than just net spend. But have you got a view on this, Kieran?
I think net spend is best suited for people who've got the memory of a goldfish, because it focuses.
You mean
on
Liverpool fans?
No, Liverpool fans.
And Arsenal
get
fans,
upset.
okay. I'll extend it to Arsenal fans as well.
Yeah. You look at net spend over 5 years, perhaps it might be valid. Over a single window or over 2 windows, it's a nonsense, because you don't build a squad over 1 or 2 windows. You build a squad over a period of time. So I think it's a crazy way to really assess a club. There's also the issue that we're living in the era of Bosman transfers. So why are Manchester United paying Sanchez 450 grand a week? Is because he was in the last 6 months of his contract. So the money that they would have given Arsenal, you know, City were prepared to pay 70 million for Sanchez 6 months previous to when he left. Instead, United effectively got him for around about 30 or 35. So his agent thinks, well, I'll pick up the slack, and that's why he's now the highest paid player in the country. So all of these things get mixed up and confused, and I agree totally with what Colin said. And also from the point of view of net spend, if you talk to a club chief executive, you say, well, just signed a player for £80 million. He says, well, I'll spread it over 5 years. We pay in instalments, we pay in tick. So therefore, you know, the transfer fee is not the issue. It's how much cash is going out of the club each year in terms of players. So net spend.
Like Arsenal just bought Nicola Pepe for 72 million. They're not going to pay 72 million on the day they sign him. They'll try and get that over 4 or 5 years. And if it's over 4 years, that's in terms of.
I think there are rules about instalments depending on whether it's a domestic or international player. I think I'm not sure, Kieran may know, I think it's maximum 2 years.
Okay,
So might be a bit longer than that, but I think there's a maximum 3 payments or over a certain period. But obviously what clubs do is they borrow the money forward. It's a bit like invoice discounting. If they know their own money, and Atletico Madrid did this for Sergio Aguero, for example. It was part of the Der Spiegel articles, whereby we promised them a down payment, 2 further payments, and they borrowed basically forward the 2 further payments. So they got the cash in against the 2 guaranteed further payments that we were going to make them. And obviously we were a good risk, so there was no issue with that.
Kieran mentioned the point about free transfers, and it's a misnomer really. There's no such thing as a free transfer. Someone says, oh, so-and-so's available on a free transfer, but the agent's going to ask for a huge signing on fee, I expect, a huge agent's fee, and massive wages. So like the Sanchez deal, I don't know the ins and outs of the deal, but we hear he's earning about 20 odd million pounds a year, and I'm sure his agent would have got an agent fee and did even a signing on fee too. So they've not got him on a free. I'm just going to throw numbers out there. You can tell me if I'm way off the mark, but let's say the agent said, well, we need a signing on fee of £20 million, and I need £5 million as well for my agent's fee. Straight away, that's £25 million. So he's not free, and you're paying him probably £200,000 a week more than you would on a 5-year contract. So that's another £50 million. So suddenly your free transfers cost you £75 million more. So it's not free, it's 75 million. Does that sound reasonable?
That's perfect. Just look to see what happened with Aaron Ramsey this summer. Aaron Ramsey, decent player. Nobody's saying he's a donkey, but he's not. He's not a crowd pleaser, is he? He ain't going to wake up one morning and say, "Oh, I'm going to watch Aaron Ramsey play today." He have happy days. Whereas the likes of some Eden Hazard or Aguero, or some players of that calibre, he's not in that league. But he's gone to Juventus and they're paying him 400 grand a week because he's not costing them a penny as far as a transfer fee. So when a club signs a player, they say, how much is it going to cost us over the 4 or 5 years that he's here? And we don't care whether it's transfer fee or agent's fee or players' wages. You look at the total amount. And that's where I think fans get this net spend thing completely wrong.
Absolutely perfect, guys.